Good evening, State Senator Bruce Tarr. How are you?
Good evening, Heather. I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Well, so there is a new state senator in our Massachusetts Senate. Do you want to tell us about her?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And so Senator Joe Boncore, who has been chairman of the Transportation Committee in the Senate and a good friend, had the opportunity to move on to a new career in the life sciences for Mass Bio. And so he left, and that created a vacancy that needed to be filled. And so we just completed a special election and just swore in our newest member of the Senate, who is Senator Lydia Edwards. And Senator Edwards is also a Boston City Councilor. So it's a very interesting thing for her to make that transition from the Boston City Council now to the Massachusetts Senate. And what's interesting too is that you might think because she's a city councilor, she would only be representing Boston proper, but actually the district spans out to places like Winthrop. And so it's a much larger district geographically than just parts of the city of Boston. So, we had a swearing in ceremony, which I participated in this past week. And it was interesting because it was not the usual kind of ceremony that we would have. As I'm sure most people know, the State House continues to be closed. And so we could not invite the public in. It was very limited. And we had some invited guests that came. So Mayor Wu, for instance, the mayor of the city of Boston was there, former Senate President Travellini, and some other special guests. But it was not the usual pomp and circumstance that would surround an inaugural event, a swearing in of a senator. But nonetheless, it was important that we continued with the operations of the Senate. We added that new member to fill the vacancy so that the folks in that district won't be unrepresented. And Senator Edwards actually delivered some wonderful remarks where she was talking about unity and being part of many different kinds of families based on her experiences in life. And so it was just a wonderful day. Would have loved to have seen the State House be open for it and have lots of people there, but it happened nonetheless. It's important that it happened. And now we have another new senator to be able to take up the work of the Senate.
Well, that is very exciting, and exciting to see a woman, a young woman of color in the Senate. That's great. That's great.
Who is extremely articulate and promised us in her inaugural remarks that she will be a hard worker. And I have no doubt of that, and very much look forward to working with her. We've had some conversations about that, and partnerships are important and relationships are important in the Senate. And we all, I think, have a very good spirit of bipartisanship. And I think that she will be a good addition to that tradition.
So in just a few words, because it's probably a big question, could you sort of sum up what's going to be the difference for her in going from being on a city council to the state Senate? I mean, obviously there's, you're representing a city and then you're representing a whole district and it's the state. So what do you think?
So it's a great question. The most obvious thing is that the number of constituents that she'll be serving is much, much larger in terms of her Senate district and her direct representation of that group. But also there are the issues around greater public policy. And so the public policy that's debated by the Boston City Council affects the residents of the city of Boston. The public policy that's debated in the Massachusetts State Senate generally affects citizens all across the state. Not always, there are still some localized issues, but for the most part. But what's interesting is not maybe as much as what's different, but what's the same. And what's the same is still listening to your constituency, understanding what's important to them, and then being a champion for those things. And that's true whether you're on the Boston City Council, or whether you're in the Massachusetts State Senate, or whether you're the governor of the Commonwealth.
Thank you for that. So, I feel as if we're on repeat, or this is a rerun of a year ago, but we are still talking about COVID relief.
Well, we are, and one of the things we've talked about in the past are emergency measures that we've implemented. Some of those have been done by executive order by the governor, but others have been done by the legislature with the approval of the governor. And many of those things either have expired or are set to expire. And so to be able to address a subset of them, the House took action this week on a COVID-19 relief bill. Now, part of what that bill does is spend money. It spends about $55 million to be able to do things like have greater personal protective equipment for our schools, and more specifically things like KN95 or N95 masks and other kinds of personal protective equipment. But the other part of that expenditure is for testing and vaccination, particularly around the school-age population, to be able to make sure that we do a better job of making sure the resources are available to them. But then the bill also looks at some of those emergency measures. So for instance, one of the things that we've done during the pandemic is allow documents to be notarized remotely via video conferencing, just as you and I are talking right now. So that authorization is extended in the bill to July 15th. Like many of the things, that tends to be a common date in this bill of extending things to July 15th. And so some other examples are around town meeting. So we know because of the difficulty in aggregating people for town meeting, one of the things that we have done in the past is allow the moderator and the Board of Selectmen to be able to reduce the number required for a quorum, which is a very important requirement. And what is allowed or has been allowed was to be able to go to no less than 10% of the normal quorum requirement. That authorization in what the House did has been extended again to July 15th. There's also the issue of having remote meetings of boards and commissions. Again, very important to make sure that folks can still participate and that we have full transparency. So the authorization for that in the House bill is also extended. Again, I believe it's to July 15th, which is a central date in much of what the House did. So that bill now has been approved by the House. It's coming to the Senate. I expect that we're going to debate it. As I understand when this will air, it's probably going to air on Tuesday, and we'll probably be debating it tomorrow on Wednesday. And so,
Nicely said. Yes, you're right.
so we'll have a number of amendments to the bill. I particularly are going to be looking to see if there's a little bit more that we might be able to do around tracking hospital beds, because that's been a huge issue with hospitals reaching or exceeding their maximum occupancy levels, and also looking to see whether we might be able to do something else to help nursing homes, which have had similar issues, in particular workforce issues. So we will likely debate some of those issues and maybe add some things, maybe not, to what the House has sent us. And the other important thing that I should say is that a critical piece of the bill that the House sent us was to actually set the date for the primaries for the elections that are coming. And the date in the bill is September 6th. And the significance of that date is that it allows overseas ballots to be mailed so that we can stay in compliance with all the requirements, as we should, to make sure that the folks that need those ballots get them in time so that they're full participants in the electoral process. So the bill sets the date as September 6th. My sense is the Senate will concur with that date, and that's an important thing to have established so that other things that are triggered by that date, like requirements for nomination papers and other procedural measures, those can be set up by the Secretary of State. So I anticipate that much of what the Senate will do with the bill will be the same. Some things could be different, but I also suspect that you will see this bill get to the desk of Governor Baker fairly quickly because of some of the important elements of it, like remote notarization, like town meeting requirements. There's also a provision in the bill that has to do with mortgage consulting for things like reverse mortgages being able to be done remotely. So there's some important things here that demand, I think, some fairly quick action, and I think you'll probably see that.
And I'm sorry, when did you say these are set to expire without this legislation?
So some of them have actually already expired at the end of December. And so we need to act fairly quickly to have some continuity. And what's in the bill that the House is sending to us are not all of those things, but a subset of them. And I suspect that after this bill, you will likely see another one relative to some of those same things. And ultimately here, there's going to be a conversation about whether or not we should extend some of these things permanently. And that will not be without controversy, because some of the accommodations that have been made due to COVID-19 have been done with the collaboration of all the affected stakeholders because of a common understanding of the emergency that we're in and the very difficult circumstances that we're in. I'm not so sure that people might view some of those things the same way if they were to be made permanent. So that may be a much different discussion.
Just name one that might be more controversial than we would suspect.
Well, the one that comes to mind immediately is the ability of restaurants to deliver alcohol with takeout meals and to provide it on a takeout basis, as opposed to only being able to serve it pursuant to a pouring liquor license in an establishment.
So we have not yet discussed Governor Baker's decision to not run for another term. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. I'm obviously disappointed that Governor Baker has chosen not to seek a third term. I certainly understand why he might not, and I think we owe him an incredible debt of gratitude for being a good leader in these very difficult times. And I wish him the very best as he continues on after he leaves office. But it's too soon to talk about that right now, because he is still our governor for roughly another year, and we will depend on him, and we'll depend on Lieutenant Governor Polito to be able to continue to lead us. But I think that his departure will be a loss for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I think he has really operated in a tremendous spirit of bipartisanship and practicality, and I think that's one of the reasons that he enjoys the popularity that he does. But it also signals an incredible change in the dynamic with the governor not choosing to seek re-election. And obviously there are a lot of folks that are in the race for governor now. Most recently, our Attorney General has decided to enter the race. And I think you may see others who are thinking about it, many of whom would not have entertained the thought at all while Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito were still potential candidates. So I think now is a much different situation, and I think a lot of folks are taking stock of where they're at and what they might be able to offer as candidates for those offices. And I think we'll see some very spirited competition.
So I can't help but imagine that you have a particular kind of closeness with the governor. You're both moderate Republicans in a Democratic state. So is that true?
So the governor and I have been friends for a long time. And that well precedes his service as our governor. And one thing, Heather, that I think folks may not remember is that Governor Baker, in prior administrations, had been the Secretary of Health and Human Services and had been the Secretary of Administration and Finance, going back to the days of Governor Weld and Lieutenant Governor Cellucci, who became Governor Cellucci. So Governor Baker has been on the scene in state government in one way or another for a very long time. And over those years, when I have also been in the service of state government, we've developed a friendship and a bond, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. And again, I'm sorry that he won't be seeking re-election, but I know Charlie well enough to know that he won't be someone that disappears from the public discourse, and neither will Lieutenant Governor Polito. They won't be folks that say, okay, our tenure as elected officials is over, and we're going to retreat, away from the public dialogue and retreat from our obligation as citizens to try to make the state stronger and better. I think you're going to continue to see them play active roles one way or another in that respect.
Well, thank you for that. And I hope we can talk to you next week.
I look forward to that. I certainly hope we can. And again, just thinking a little bit ahead, we're starting to see some very seasonable temperatures, as the weather folks will say, where it's a little bit colder. So I hope we'll all stay warm, and next week we'll be able to get together again and talk about things, including the weather.
Exactly. And I hope there's not too much topical weather, to tell you the truth. I don't mean tropical, I mean topical. I don't think I hope there's not that much to talk about. But always nice to see you and to chat with you. So thank you.
Well, same here. Thank you. And as always, thank you. And thanks to 1623 Studios for allowing us to talk about the matters that are important in our civic lives and our community lives, because it's so critically important. And I appreciate the ability to do that.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Interested in a sponsorship? Email sponsor@1623studios.org to learn more.